Test, test. Can everybody hear me across the street?
Woo!
I hear you. Got any money?
Got any booze?
I got everything you want, baby doll.
This is in dedication to every person that is in jail right now for exposing the truth. Anyone who trades freedom for security deserves neither. Benjamin Franklin. Government big enough to supply everything you need is big enough to take everything you have. The course of history shows that as the government grows, liberty decreases. Thomas Jefferson. Hello and thank you all, brothers and sisters, for coming to celebrate our International Day of Privacy, otherwise known as Operation Big Brother. As you may know, we are here to raise awareness and speak out about the ongoing surveillance state and how it is violating our Fourth Amendment. Since 2001, they have been coming up with and passing bills that encroach on our unalienable rights that have been given to us by our forefathers. You have the Patriot Act to spy on you warrantlessly. Now with more advanced technologies of the 21st century coming out, companies like DARPA and Raytheon are developing Department of Defense technologies that are far beyond our initial imagination. Technologies like Trapwire, Index, Riot, FAST, biometric scanners, long-range fingerprinting and iris scans, Robocop-like devices that allow police to identify a target just by looking at them, and now the Air Force has unveiled their new micro-aerial vehicles. Here are two more quotes I would like you to consider. One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Plato. To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men. Abraham Lincoln. Unfortunately, most of America has been silent since 2001. Our silence has been taken as consent from our government, consenting to the shredding of our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. We all know the Patriot Act and how it allows agencies to warrantlessly listen to our electronic communications on either our phones or through our computers. This is a full-blown violation of our rights to speak freely, unmolested, and to be left alone. Agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA are among the agencies that we know of using programs in the background to monitor your communication. They say it's there for your protection, but is it really?
No! No!
The whole Bill of Rights is a declaration of the right of the people at large considered as individuals. It establishes some rights of the individual as unalienable, in which consequently no majority has the right to deprive them of. Albert Gallatin. Massachusetts-based Department of Defense contractor Raytheon has developed a program that has an extreme-scale analytics system called RIOT. RIOT is an acronym for Rapid Information Overlay Technology, and this program monitors all social medias and can predict where you will most likely be at any given time, pull together your relationships with people, and all your life history. All from social medias like Facebook, Twitter, and Foursquare, among others, that give away your GPS location data. There was a congressional hearing called Protecting Mobile Privacy. Ironically enough, at this hearing, a DOJ official called for new laws that require mobile providers to collect and store information about their customers. The government is requiring by law that all ISPs and phone companies indirectly through a third party retain all the information, so that way the government is allowed to circumvent our Fourth Amendment without a search warrant. All because we give our details to a carrier or an ISP. And we have bills like CISPA that make it even easier than it is now for the government to obtain sensitive information on us. This is why we need to stop CISPA and all its derivatives from making it into law.
That's right.
Now we witness the invasion and arrival of the Transportation Safety Authority, otherwise known as the scum at the airports, aka the TSA, in our great city of Boston. They have been doing warrantless bag searches on our subway system. It is our duty as Americans to let our representatives and government know that we will not stand for this, and we will not consent to random bag searches in our train system or any checkpoint. These random searches have to go.
Right.
Along with the TSA, their searches, the Department of Homeland Security, working with a company called Draper Laboratory for Cambridge, who have been testing a technology called FAST. FAST is an acronym for Future Attribute Screening Technology. Its main use is to scan people for malintent by screening for psychological and physiological indicators in a mobile screening laboratory. These systems have a shade of Minority Report written all over them. These are, in its simplest form, no more than thought police or pre-crime units.
Yay.
Having an iris scan, a fingerprint read, or going through security and having a hand stuck down your pants is enough to raise any person's heart rate or blood pressure, which can give away false reads for these pre-crime units. In turn, could falsely flag someone as a potential terrorist, thus making the entire system unworkable anywhere. If they're to try to use these systems, we must act accordingly and make sure we take them down legally by contacting our representatives and tell them that you do not want this, you do not condone this. The Department of Homeland Security recently advanced a plan to deploy public safety drones in the skies of America. An action Congress authorized last year called for the deployment of 30,000 surveillance drone vehicles by the year 2020. We are 7 years away from having 30,000 vehicles and unmanned aerial drones in our skies. Obama has made it clear that his administration is working closely with Congress to develop a legal framework that will allow the chief executive and his subordinates leeway to initiate strikes right here at home. This legal framework is really what they're calling oversight issues. In reality, what they're hoping for is the lack of oversight, period. Just this week, the United States Air Force has unveiled information about micro-aerial vehicles, or MAVs. They have the ability to hover like bees, crawl like bugs, and sneak on unsuspecting targets and neutralize a specific target with lethal precision. They're even capable of shutting down into an efficient battery mode and can conserve energy and have surveillance on a target for weeks on end. Right now, they could be spying on us with these micro drones, and we would never, ever know it. One can only conclude that military and law enforcement drone strikes will soon be business as usual and likely the preferred method for dealing with, as the Patriot Act outlines, those who intimidate or coerce the civilian population or attempt to influence government policy. Pretty much anyone who disagrees with what the government is doing. Under the guise of the National Defense Authorization Act, individuals who have committed no crime can be arrested and incarcerated at the will of the government without proven crime.
Indefinitely.
And they're doing it all
Indefinitely.
the time. They're doing it all the time.
So tell me, do you guys condone the government spying on you?
No!
Unfortunately, this is Boston, and we have a police force that passes information on activist identity and so forth on the fusion centers, and from there to basically every agency under the DHS umbrella. They did so with Occupy. Activists are being labeled terrorists by our government for turning up at peaceful events. Privacy is as fundamental in the physical world as it is online, and we should protect it as vigorously as possible. One of the simple, effective tactics for maintaining this privacy when at a protest or any such action is to black block. Anyone can black block, and it costs very little. Black bloc isn't a group, an ideology, nor does it mean violence. It's a tactic and nothing else. Black bloc means dressing head to toe in black, including wearing a bandana to obscure your face. Black bloc hides your identity when a whole group is in black bloc together, they become difficult to distinguish from one another. It makes targeted attacks, such as the Oakland Police Department's targeted grabs, difficult. When we block together, we are a collective and we can protect ourselves and others effectively while limiting the amount of personal reprisals that we face. In Chicago, the NATO summit, the Chicago PD raided protesters' homes before the protest even started. This is the kind of reprisal that we seek to deter by engaging in black blocs. They did this because they knew who the protesters were, but by black blocking to maintain your privacy, you can reduce the likelihood of being identified and targeted. Doing black bloc together protects all of us. The more of us there are, the less likely any of us are to be identified. Black bloc does not mean violence. This is a common misconception. Black bloc can be used by any group, including non-violent and violent groups. And I advocate for the non-violent use of black bloc to protest those who are actively engaging in protest. I suggest that everyone use black bloc when they engage in any sort of political activism. There are cameras everywhere. Protecting your identity and staying off the police radar is very key to your effectiveness as a member protester. Does everyone see these types of cameras right here? These are CCTVs, and they're hooked up to programs like Trapwire and Index. Here to talk about these parasites spying on society is Seek Veracity from Occupy Maine, and he is the creator of DocumentingDystopia.org. But before he speaks, I want to thank you all for turning out for this, and I leave you with one last quote to consider. That quote: "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. If we are to guard against ignorance and remain free, it is the responsibility of every American to be informed." Thomas Jefferson. Thank you very much for turning out. This is International Day of Privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Testing, testing. All right. You people on the other side of the street, feel welcome to come join us as we demonstrate our First Amendment rights to speak out against the oppression across our country and countries around the world. Woo! Now, I've never been good at this public speaking thing, so do me a favor. When we get to that point and I make an ass out of myself, at least send me a link to the video on YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. Today, we rise across the globe to stand up and defend our human right to privacy from those who have taken it from us. Those people that call themselves our leaders and dare to say our protectors. Many of you do not know me and may not have heard of my work, and that is why I am here. My handle is Seek Veracity. I'm a native New Englander, an organizer and an activist of Occupy Maine, and the founder of Documenting Dystopia, a crowdsourcing effort to build the world's first global surveillance camera directory. I am honored to have the opportunity to speak here today about our shared concerns of the erosion of our privacy and the expansion of the surveillance state. I know this is a topic close to home for peaceful activists here in Boston and around the world, as governments, especially our own, are increasingly expanding surveillance infrastructure to illegally monitor its citizens and, more despicably, its protesters, and using your taxpayer funds at that.
Right.
I feel that privacy is one of the most important topics of discussion in our now interconnected society. Now, that being said, privacy is only one facet of the decline of our society into a dystopian landscape. You may have seen the phrase, 1984 is not an instruction manual. That's because George Orwell's 1984 describes a dystopia in which surveillance and intimidation are tools of oppression used by a totalitarian government known as Big Brother. Look around you, what do you see? You are on at least 5 surveillance cameras right now, if you can hear me. A dystopia is a community or a society that is undesirable and even frightening. The very opposite of a utopia, dystopia is often characterized by many categories. Perpetual war, information control, environmental disasters, dehumanization, and totalitarian and tyrannical governments. Now make no mistake, a tyrannical government gains its power through oppression. A totalitarian government gains its power through ultimate control. Brothers and sisters, we have both. Woo! Let's talk perpetual war. We've been at war with an invisible and ever-moving enemy, which has dragged our defenses to over half a dozen countries. Through force and intimidation, we continue to destroy families and communities that will grow up with an understandable and insurmountable hatred for the United States. Information control? Our mainstream media has become the lapdogs that a tyranny wants them to be instead of the watchdogs that a democracy requires. Woo! Organizations like WikiLeaks have extrajudicial financial blockades placed upon them for not towing a party line and refusing to speak anything but the absolute, unadulterated truth. Whistleblowers of corporate, federal, and military crimes are being persecuted for their bravery and not honored for their heroism. Environmental disaster? We've seen progressively more dangerous storm systems, dozens, hundreds, and thousands of people without food or shelter in any given month. 50,000 people just marched on D.C. as Obama played golf with oil executives. Yet we continue to subsidize a multi-billion-dollar energy that strips the money from our pockets, the life from our planet, and the years from our children's lives.
Right.
Dehumanization. Reality television, let's sit there for a moment.
Oh, God.
We draw hordes of people to enjoy voyeurism in the form of arguing, shopping, crying, killing, suffering, fucking, and surviving. Yeah! Indefinite detention, torture, police brutality run rampant through our streets from sea to shining sea. Politicians will deny the need for background checks for a firearm while mandating intrusive medical exams on a pregnant woman before she can make her own medical choices. Pundits and politicians continue to bicker amongst themselves, generating meaningless distractions and divisiveness amongst our people. These differences of gender, race, sexuality are used to draw lines in the sand when they should be used to unite us as a species filled with genuinely unique and amazing individuals. And tyranny and totalitarian governments. If you deny a full-body scanner at an airport and the TSA puts their hands down your pants, does that sound like government overreach to you?
Yes.
Yes!
Sounds like a government reach around.
Corrupt politics strangle our democracy as we are locked into an electoral system of two false choices for hope, neither of which are sponsored by our people.
Right, that's right.
These politicians are sponsored by immortal corporations that continue to use record profits to purchase any politician who will bend over and say yes, sir.
A lot of them.
We are losing our first, our second, our fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth amendment.
And 10.
And your government has convinced your friends and family that it's all okay. It's for your safety, under the guise of providing a false security to a non-existent threat to our freedom. Now, the last aspect of a dystopian society, which I will be focusing on primarily now, is the one that we are exhibiting more with each passing year, and that is the illegal surveillance, investigation, and persecution of law-abiding citizens and First Amendment demonstrators, both in and out of public spaces. Public records and surveillance video obtained by the Massachusetts ACLU and the National Lawyers Guild of Massachusetts show that Boston police routinely spy on ordinary citizens engaged in peaceful First Amendment protected activity, much like this. They are creating criminal intelligence reports on the lawful political activity of peace groups and local leaders. It is well known that due to fear of police surveillance and arrest, there are many who do not show up to these demonstrations. You dare not cross the street and join us. You fear becoming identified by law enforcement as threats, and trust me, I understand. Despite our declarations of nonviolence, there is overwhelming documentation that many activists are victims of legal and physical harassment, police stalking, and violence perpetrated by police officers and federal agents. Protect and serve has never stopped being the policy. They are serving and protecting our leaders from prosecution and the exposure of their corruption, while innocent civilians have no protection from militarized police forces using tear gas, pepper spray, batons to beat us into submission. And drones in Boston. Many officers and military personnel are victims of a system in which attempting to expose corruption will lead to their dismissal and public humiliation, such as what happened to Christopher Dorner. But to public servants who do not question illegal orders, I say to you that you have lost far more than your job. You have lost the goodness within your soul and the trust and respect of your community and the entire world. If untrained civilians have the courage to withstand this brutality for practicing our constitutional rights, they very damn well should have the courage to protect them.
Yeah.
It is these kinds of abuses and many others that have been systematically practiced by authorities in pursuit of members of our activism communities that gain any following. Eventually, we face trumped-up charges and avoid fair trials, and we detain individuals such as in the following examples. Bradley Manning has spent 1,000 days in jail facing extended solitary confinement, humiliation after leaking information to WikiLeaks that was falsely reported as endangering our national security. Julian Assange has been on the run for just as long from authorities as he fears extradition to the United States for crimes of treason. Treason to a country that he is not a resident of. Jeremy Hammond for almost a year has been in custody for taking part in the Stratfor hack that resulted in the exposure of an Orwellian surveillance system known as Trapwire.
Free Hammond!
Free Hammond! Free Hammond!
Free all political prisoners!
And let's not forget Barrett Brown, my inspiration for my project. He has spent 165 days in jail, and he is facing up to 100 years, and a majority of that sentence is from sharing a link to a document that he did not create.
Fuck that!
And of course, it is these same authorities and prosecutors that contributed greatly to the reported suicide of Aaron Swartz only 43 days ago. Although I would like to pause for a moment of silence to honor Aaron and his accomplishments in activism, to remain silent for even 1 second would be a disgrace to his memory, and we shall never provide our government with the luxury of our silence again!
Yeah. Woo! Woo!
These are only a few examples of what we have come to expect from our surveillance state. Citizens who speak their mind or try to expose the truth when the media purposefully chooses to lie to you are becoming targets of law enforcement working for those that wish to remain in power. One of the most important tools of this surveillance is the cameras above your head right now and across every cityscape. What was once a useful technology that was used to catch actual criminals after they have committed a crime is now being used for the widespread public monitoring of peaceful citizens and demonstrators. The NSA, the DHS, the FBI, CIA, and other government organizations have spent countless billions of your money on this dragnet surveillance system. Over $3 billion spent in New York alone over the last 10 years. Supporters of these domestic surveillance programs say these measures are used to identify and prevent terrorism plots, which is only an honest explanation when paired with the fact that the FBI labels Occupy Wall Street as a domestic terrorist organization. Methods like these are a standard operating procedure indicative of tyranny that tries to crush dissent through intimidation.
Right.
And I am not intimidated.
We're not intimidated.
These technologies are an increasingly prevalent threat to your privacy, your anonymity, and your voice, the voice of the individual who dare to question power. The surveillance state has already become reality. This is not science fiction. This is your fucking life.
Woo!
There is no end in sight. Depending on where you live, every move is recorded, analyzed, and archived for Big Brother's viewing pleasure. And we can't discuss privacy without referring back to Trapwire. Trapwire is a sophisticated surveillance technology. It operates behind the scenes of any number of cameras across the world. It's described by its creators. Trapwire detects, analyzes, and alerts on suspicious events as they are collected over periods of time and over multiple locations. They go on to say that terrorist or criminal surveillance and pre-attack planning operations can be identified and appropriate law enforcement countermeasures employed ahead of crimes.
Potato morning!
The Trapwire system, exposed in the Stratfor email leak from WikiLeaks, can use facial recognition and walking patterns or gait recognition to identify an individual and cross-reference their behaviors based on a definition of suspicious behavior that you do not know. As much as I hate using this cliched comparison, we are looking at a legitimate Minority Report situation. You are being identified and pursued by authorities before you have committed a crime. These abuses of the very surveillance systems that promised us protection are a violation of trust with the American people, and they should not be tolerated anymore. Trapwire, the Patriot Act, CISPA, and the amended FISA Act are collectively an obscene violation of the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated!
Woo!
Now, some of you may already know that some activists in Germany and now in the United States are taking the fight against surveillance in a violent direction, declaring a game called Cam Over, where citizens are destroying surveillance cameras and points being awarded for effective and creative methods. Though we obviously understand and empathize with the inhumane breach of privacy and your urge to defend it, I cannot condone these destructive acts, and nor can documenting dystopia. Destructive acts of this nature will only serve to strengthen both the police state and the surveillance state in the name of anti-terrorism. These cameras are but the symptom of a governmental cancer caused by unadulterated corruption within the upper echelons of federal law enforcement, coupled with a complete disregard for transparency and accountability. Despite the lack of necessity and overwhelming budget deficits, these cameras are here, and their numbers grow daily. And so do ours.
Yeah!
To expect, however, that we can find a place to hide from the unlawful prying eyes of our big brother is proving to be unreasonable, impossible. Even the mainstream media is admitting that drones may soon come to the United States, and this will mean there will truly be no hiding. Big Brother is watching you indeed. So what can we do about it? At Documenting Dystopia, we want to turn the tables. Contemplate an alternative future for this surveillance state. Not one of Big Brother, but of shared safety. Imagine a world where the feeds on these cameras that blanket public spaces are freely and publicly accessible. You could go to a website, you could view any camera at any time, possibly even view archived footage. Now, innately, this may sound like a denouncement of privacy altogether. However, I assure you that if public surveillance technologies are ever expanding and able to be monitored by any citizen freely and transparently, then Big Brother cannot exist, as his power becomes evenly distributed to the people. This is only the first step, as this war that our leaders have waged upon us will have many battles. So long as corruption runs rampant, we cannot afford to rest. When I first became aware of Trapwire, my visualization of a camera directory started as a collaborative Google map known as Tracking Trapwire. I knew it would be useful to society to have a public service that documents their camera locations in a map form. The thought being, if they can place their eyes on every wall, then we can watch them from every street. Our concept is simple, our goals are unprecedented, and our vision is ever expanding. We are crowdsourcing on a global scale the documenting of cameras in public spaces around the world in a central location with a database maintained by the people.
Yay!
Now, ironically, the controversial location services features. That's right. Now, ironically, the controversial location services features on your smartphones have proved to be an invaluable tool for our directory. You take pictures of cameras that contain GPS coordinates, you send them to us, and we generate the map. So made possible by the supporters of WikiLeaks, Anonymous, and inspired by writers such as Barrett Brown, what started in August 2012 as Tracking Trapwire has quickly grown into a project with a larger scope than just pinpointing one surveillance system. As documenting dystopia, we are dedicated to building, with your help, the world's first global surveillance camera directory and advocating for the full transparency of any public surveillance system. We have taken the first steps to creating this database on our website, and we already have over 2,000 cameras between two countries. And we have heard from people who want to help in Ukraine, Germany, Australia, England, Brazil, and as of this week, Italy. Now, we need you. Now, we need you. Anybody can contribute easily to our database, and our goals are attainable with the help of the public. We also need a coder to develop a free smartphone app that will easily integrate our database for your camera submissions. Our project is only in its infancy, but with the help of the public, we will all become the driving force for the elimination of Big Brother. In conclusion, as long as we have reason to encrypt our communications to share our thoughts, wear masks to speak our minds, and spread information to expose his crimes, remember that Big Brother will be watching, and we cannot hide. Since the media refuses to be the watchdogs that democracy requires, then let us work together to avoid being the lapdogs that they have become, and ensure that we no longer remain passively beneath the boot of an oppressive and overreaching government. Stand up for your privacy and pull your family and friends together with us. To modernize the words of Charlie Chaplin from The Great Dictator, the internet, live streams, groups like Anonymous, WikiLeaks, and Occupy have brought us closer together. The very nature of their invention cries out for the goodness in humanity. Cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice could be reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison the innocent. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, who to love, who to hate, what to think, what to feel, who of humanity in your hearts. You do not hate, only the unloved hate. Their misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed and the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators will die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. I'm Sikh Veracity from Documenting Dystopia. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Big Brother is watching, and now, so are we!
Yeah! Woo! Yay! Woo! Woo! Hey!
All right. Thank you all for coming out. My name's... Can you hear me? Roger, hear me over here. All right. My name's James O'Keefe. I'm captain of the Massachusetts Pirate Party, the one party in Massachusetts that will stand up for your liberty, that will stand up for your privacy here.
Yeah!
I want to thank you all for coming. Now, I'm not going to go over, as my two predecessors have done, in enumerating so well the problems that we face. We know that the Justice Department or the Attorney General can go and get your private communications without a warrant. Where you've been, what you've been doing. But we're here to make sure that we stand up for our rights and stop that. After this, I don't want to keep it too long, but after this at 3 o'clock, we're going to have a crypto party. It's the second one we've run that will allow you to learn how to protect your communications on the internet, how you can encrypt your communications so that no one but the people who you want to send a message to can actually see your message. With these tools, you can make sure that the NSA and other government agencies don't spy on you.
That's right! Woo!
So it's going to be down that way. We'll leave after this. We'll put it all on the web.
Yay for the web! Woo!
So thank you again all for coming. I know I'm going to be talking very much after this. And that's all I got to say. Who's next?
Ready to go? Woo! Woo! Woo!
In this country today, we have total saturation of surveillance. NDAA, the Patriot Act, CISPA, these dragnets online, they track you everywhere you go. Look at the police cruisers in your community, automated license plate readers. Look at these cameras, facial recognition software. There is a reason the Fourth Amendment was created in this country, and it was to protect you from being searched, from being followed, from being tracked by the government. And as it's been well documented in the past 30, 40 years, the government goes after protesters. If you are against the war, you're a target. If you believe in freedom of speech, you're a target. If you're against the police state, you're a target. The Fourth Amendment protects your right not to be tracked to your home, not to be harassed by the government. If you people can't get up and say, I have a right as a private, law-abiding United States citizen to not be harassed by my government, to not have my emails read without warrant, to not have my phones tapped, to not have my location tracked, to not have my license plate read by automatic systems with no warrant and no cause, then what are you doing? Get involved. You are seeing this giant police state grow around you. You are seeing cameras, drones. They have drones You know what drones do in other countries? They kill people.
They bomb this
What
shit
are they
out
going
of
to do
you.
here? They're talking about technology to give them tasers, to give them shotgun shells. Are you kidding me? Stop this. Stand up. Support your right to privacy. Push back against NDAA, against CISPA. Demand the Patriot Act be repealed. Demand your basic human rights, not granted by the Constitution, protected by the Constitution. Demand those rights restored now. Get involved. The best thing any one person can do is get involved in your local government, run for offices, get other voices in there. Get these career politicians, scumbags taking money from Wall Street out.
Fucking yeah.
Thank you.
Woo! Woo!
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about what NDAA is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me in the park?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to talk to you about what NDAA really is, because it drives me crazy about all the misconceptions about NDAA. People are pissed off about NDAA and they think it's something new. In fact, NDAA has been passed every year in January since, from what I can tell, the early 1980s. Okay? And people are all riled up about it right now, and that's good and that's important, because in the past 2 years, this Congress that we've had, this fucked up, crazy ass Republican Congress, has used NDAA as a tool to pass laws that are jeopardizing our civil liberties like never before. Okay? So what happens is we have the House Armed Services Committee that writes NDAA, and they write NDAA to fund the military and to construct the budget for the military and to construct the way that the military operates our, wait, I have it all written out here, responsible for the defense and the policies and how those policies are funded, okay? And in the past 2 years, the way that NDAA has been written has been very different than in all the years before that. And so, absolutely, we need to be angry about NDAA, but we also have to understand that NDAA is different now than it has been in years past. Okay? I'm a teacher. This is what I do. So what's wrong with NDAA right now? Huh. Okay. First of all, alright, so there's these 2 NDAA bills in law that are significantly problematic. One of the problems is fiscal year 12 and then fiscal year 13 brought through a law that says the president can use military force, and this is what my fine colleague here was talking about just a moment ago, use a military force against terrorists, okay? Okay, that's one thing. But the law also says, and I quote, also, any person who has committed a belligerent act or who has directly supported any such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces. None of these words are ever explained anywhere in the document. Any person. That could mean any of us. So basically this law is giving them blatant, absolute and total lateral ability to do anything they want.
That's right.
That's fucking wrong. Okay.
Right, it is wrong.
Sorry, am I hurting you? Okay, so that's a problem. That's something we need to we need to do something about. Another problem is, by the way, Feinstein Lee, if you heard about that was overturned, and our good friend John McCain brought in the Gorman Amendment. The Gorman Amendment is like a little band-aid, and it does nothing. It brings in habeas corpus, but habeas corpus does not actually apply because the law actually states that American citizens can be taken anywhere in the world for trial. That means if you get picked up on the side of the road for this indefinite detention, which we've all heard about the indefinite detention, you can be taken anywhere across the globe by any police officer officer, a Boston police officer, we could be picked up right now and taken to fucking Guantanamo Bay for our trial. I'm not joking. Who wants to go to Gitmo? Or worse, who knows what? And speaking of Guantanamo Bay, part of the problem too is that in the funding, because like I said, NDAA is all about funding, in the funding, the Congress set it up so that President Obama, I know that's a popular thing to talk about, but President Obama, one of his goals was to close Guantanamo Bay, whatever you feel about that. But the NDAA is set up so that there's absolutely no funding possible to transfer people out of Guantanamo Bay. So it's impossible to close Guantanamo Bay. I want Guantanamo Bay closed. I think Guantanamo Bay is fucked up and we need to close that shit. But NDAA made it impossible to close because they made it impossible to get funding to get the people out. So, what do we do about this? There's lots of other problems. And I wrote about them in this paste bin, and I put it on this little piece of paper so you can get this little yellow piece of paper to get the paste bin, because I didn't want to kill all the trees and have it flying around Boston. So yeah. But the thing that you need to do, because right now, the committee is writing fiscal year 14 NDAA. They're doing it right now, because they are supposed to be done with it like by May. And the committee is already established, and on that paste bin I have the list of all the people that are writing it. And you need to call them, and you need to be like, what the fuck are you doing to our Constitution? You need to say, stop taking away my civil liberties. Give them back to me. You need to call these people. You need to write to these people. And you need to say, stop. Stop deconstructing my Constitution now. And then you need to call your congressman. You need to write to your House of Representatives. You need to talk to these people. And you need to say, stop. And you need to do something. Because they are the only people that can stop it. And this is not an irreversible problem, people. This thing comes up every year, and it can be changed. It can be fixed. The habeas corpus clause is in response to the rumblings that have began. But we all need to stop watching Honey fucking Boo Boo and Desperate Housewives and start paying attention to what's happening in this country. Because your children are going to live in a police state, and that's not okay. Actually, they are living in a police state. You just aren't paying attention enough to realize it. Thank you.
Yeah! Woo! Woo! Does anybody else want to say anything?
Everybody for coming out. Thank you everybody for listening to us. In parting, we are anonymous. We are the Masked Pirates. We are Defend the Fourth. We are your friends for the Fourth Amendment. A couple things I did want to illustrate from the last person. Two people you should think of when you think of your rights. You say, well, you know, only terrorists and bad guys lose their rights. Jose Padilla was abducted by the United States government. No trial, no warrant, held indefinitely, in secret, a United States citizen. That was under Bush.
What was the other guy's name?
Anwar al-Awlaki, United States citizen, assassinated by a Predator drone under Barack Obama. No warrant, no trial. You as a United States citizen aren't even protected by your Constitution anymore. And you can say, these are bad guys. Fine, give me a trial and prove it. That's the basis of our legal system.
Yeah.
Give me a trial and prove it.
Due process!
Now you heard there's a crypto party in 3 over at Quintro 5. Going to teach you how to protect your communication, especially when you're online, so that these unwarranted snoopers can't listen in to you. Before we go, we are anonymous. We always did. We do not forget. We do not forget. Expect us.
That's it, go home.